I now pronounce you man and Worf.
Well, I mean, Dax has been both a male and a female person.
So we could stick with it, right? Man and Worf?
Woof. You were so proud of yourself. Oh, I've got one.
I thought for sure I had it nailed.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today, Mike has a tie. I'm wearing tails, for God's sakes, because we are talking about Season 6, Episode 7. You are cordially invited. We have a nice little souffle of a wedding episode this week after all of the chaos, stakes, and pew-pews. If I start to sound horrible, it's because I have a cold, but I'm mostly through it. But I'm gonna soldier through. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I was saying on the watch along that we have to reestablish the norm now that we're back on the station. We're sort of resetting the playing field of the arc and of the show, and it kind of calls for a calmer sort of episode, I think. When you look at the whole thing, but at the
palate cleanser.
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't want to drop the momentum. For an easy episode, there's actually a lot riding on it. So I'm interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk about it. I had not seen it in a while, and it was nice to sort of to dip back in and finally, we've been talking about this wedding for episodes and episodes. Nice to finally get there. But before we do, folks, we have to talk about last week's episode with the hails from the patrons. Of course, folks, it was the epic conclusion of our 7-week story. We got the station back, and so we're going to have a lot of comments.
And let's not forget, Mike handed out the first 100 of the series.
That's right. That's right. So everybody settle in. Here is what the patrons had to say. If you'd like to join them, Mike, how do they do that?
Easy peasy. Patreon.com/K&M. You can join for the low price of $1. Heck! You can just leave a comment and say something nice and pretty about us on the YouTube, right. And Keith will read it because he's easily swayed with compliments.
Narcissist. Absolutely.
And also, if you listen on the podcast, please, you also can write us at keithandmikeentertainment@gmail.com. Or look at my Star Trek toys at gmail.com. Either or will get you here. Keith will read it. It's going to be great.
Without a doubt. Okay, Joshua Cronin says, you will not ever view a better Trek. Watch it all, and I challenge you to tell me another one is better. This episode is intense, and I love how worked up you both are. It's just great watching this. It never gets old. And I'm so happy you gave it 100, Mike, because in my opinion, there are still better episodes, and in this season even. So happy to be watching you see all this. Again, like you, I love how not everything goes right. They're failures. It's so real life. But they do come back. Wow, it does feel good. Now that they are back, get ready for this storytelling now. 97 self-sealing stem bolts from me. Oh, and we got a lot of answers to a question I don't remember asking, but I know that I did. Asking, what do you call us?
Oh yeah, I asked.
Oh, you asked it. Okay. Well, I don't listen when Mike talks, so double. I don't remember what I say, and I don't listen when Mike talks. So thank you for remembering. And Josh says, oh, and when I listen to you, my boys in the background, they call you the podcast people. Since I don't watch any other podcasts, kind of makes you sound like lizard people. Fair enough.
Yeah, fair.
Brian from Video Game Drive-By says, hey guys, this is it. This is how you stick a landing. The give and take of the front part of the season ties up beautifully with the new status quo, and the new status quo is here. This is a near perfect episode, 100 stem bolts, and it retroactively applies 10 stem bolts to every episode before this season for paying off everything so well.
Okay.
I love thinking about it that way, because I really do think that when you stick the landing, it benefits everything else, and when you don't, it detracts from everything else. And so glad they stuck the landing here. Also, our other question of the day, again, didn't remember, but what was the straight Trek dating app?
You asked that.
Obviously, V'ger. Oh my god. Chef's kiss. No better answer than that. No better answer. Quark's Bar says, even having only seen it for the first time in a decade after airing, this episode changed everything we at Quark's understood about television. Top to bottom, mind-blowingly good, and still better than 95% of what's out there today. Agreed. A commendation to both of you for making it here. This journey has been some of the top Star Trek content out there. You mean us?
He can't mean us.
No, that's a lie. Congratulations to Mike's recent real estate acquisition. The live reactions on Patreon are and have been worth every slip of latinum. We need to put that on something. We award 100 self-sealing stem bolts to this episode of a quarter century ahead of its time, and an additional self-sealing stem bolt for the Hasperat souffle. Tastes like Cardassian shame.
101.
We'll see you at the punchies. Love it.
Keith.
Love it.
Just to go back one, what is your handle on V'ger?
What? One-handled.
How about Keith Space not quite 9?
Keith Space, a respectable 6.
Yeah. The camera adds 3.
Oh God, I'm dying.
Sorry, folks.
Woo, we might have to have Mike take over reading some of these.
Yeah, I don't have them up, so no.
As I'm dying from diphtheria here. Hilarious. All right, Harry Pothead says, this episode obviously gets 100 stem bolts. It's everything you want, everything a person could possibly ask for after watching Deep Space Nine up to this point. There are stakes, humor, betrayal, counter-betrayal, victory, loss, and tragedy. Are you not entertained?
I am.
I honestly think that Sisko wasn't considering the prophets in any way at that point. He was just prepared to be the first to die. Ooh, that's scary. I like it.
There's a comment later. I don't know if you're going to read it, man. It might not have been a patron, but it added a lot of context to the Sisko prophets thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, look up who that was, because
sure.
It was reminding us from like 2 episodes previously, because, we're dumb, that he couldn't close the wormhole.
Right.
That the thing that backfired when they were trying to destroy the wormhole actually made it impossible to close. So that was not part of his plan to stop the wormhole. So thanks for reminding us. Mike will chime in and remind us who said that. So Kevin Miles says, this is a great episode. It opens so many doors as it closes. It opens as many doors as it closes. I wish I could say more without giving away what is to come. I saw Deep Space Nine in its first run. This show gets better with each rewatch. Like Keith, I know what is to come. Give this episode 99 self-sealing stem bolts.
Keith, Scott B chimes in. Hey, Scott, how you doing? One minor comment on you're wondering if Sisko had been planning to close the wormhole as a backup plan. That was what I thought. He can't! At least not anymore. He indeed has always kept that option in the back of his pocket, and he actually tried to exercise that option back in Purgatory's Shadow. However, when they tried to shut the wormhole to prevent the initial fleet of Jem'Hadar that went to Cardassia coming through, the beam they shot at the wormhole actually significantly strengthened it.
Because of the sabotage, yes.
Sabotager, the Bashir, and made it, or Changeling Bashir, made it impossible for them to collapse it. So when he went into that wormhole, there was no wormhole sealing plan B. He was profits or bust the entire time.
Yes. Which, again, as we were saying about retroactive stem bolts to stuff that we set up and now pays off, I think that episode is made better
yes.
because of the payoff here, because we see why that matters, that actually finishes that idea and also makes valid the sacrifice that changeling made to do all of that. Big deal. Odo's Bucket, welcome. A patron I don't think has commented as Odo's Bucket, but welcome. We see you.
Yeah, hasn't formed the fingers to type from his bucket goo recently, but welcome.
No. It's not Odo in the bucket. It's just the bucket itself.
Now, hold on.
Okay.
Could you have a changeling become a bucket and have someone else goo deposit into the bucket? Why not?
You certainly could. I would imagine that if you were to goo into a different goo in the form of a bucket, you'll be able to tell that you were goo.
I mean,
in the
if
form
it's
of a bucket,
consensual,
but you never know.
If it's consensual, go for it. Bucket goo all you want.
100%. No. As long as it's
you know the old
consensual.
saying, 2 goos in a bucket.
2 goos in a bucket.
Ever tell you a story when Jen, I was prepping for Plaid and for weeks, and then Jen, I just didn't have the heart to tell her that, because she kept calling it 2 coins in a fountain, and I just didn't have the heart to tell her it was 3 coins in the fountain. So for months, she just kept calling it 2 coins in a fountain. When I told her it was 3 coins, she was so pissed.
I mean, to be fair, I've done the show, and if you told me it was 2 coins I was like, sure.
Keith's a professional. He'll say what's on the page.
Damn right. All right, so Odo's Bucket, singular, plural, 3, who knows, says, such a great episode and the ending of the story arc. All the pew-pews, Ducat's pathological narcissism, Quark getting blood on his hands, Odo choosing his found family, over his goo mistress, our crew retaking the station, so many fantastic moments, and I laugh every time Wayun claps his hands together and says, time to start packing. As far as what Sisko's plan was for dealing with the Dominion Armada coming through the Gamma Quadrant, I don't think he had much of a plan other than to see what they were up against. 3 theories, I think 3 good theories. The first time I saw the episode, I thought he was willing to die and in the process collapse the wormhole from the inside. His first line to the wormhole aliens was, "Why have you brought me here?" Like he wasn't expecting them to get involved. He seemed angry that they would remove him from such a crucial moment in time, and even demands he be returned to his reality. I think once he realized they weren't going to let him die, he saw the opportunity to have them get involved and a new plan was hatched. I tend to think of the wormhole aliens as not knowing everything everywhere all at once, but be able to drop in on the timeline like that of a video.
Pip and pop.
If you want to skip ahead to a certain moment and see how things are playing out, just go to that timestamp and hit play. I love that concept.
Pip and pop.
They're certainly able to shape the events to come as they tell Sisko and his pa will take a different path. But I feel like they leave some agency with the beings they interact with. After all, corporeal matters do not concern them. By the way, I love that the wormhole aliens refer to linear existence as a game because of Sisko's baseball analogy in the pilot. Like Keith said, everything connects back to the beginning. This episode gets 98 self-sealing stem bolts from me. This is a result of the writers, actors, and crew members firing on all cylinders, and I'm here for it. Odo's Bucket. Yeah.
Yeah, that bit about the game was one sticking point that actually had stuck with me, and I didn't quite understand. I would have waited to find out why they were using that analogy had Odo not had Sir Bucket not reminded me, and that blew my mind a little bit.
Sir Bucket. Yeah, I mean, you know what might be fun when this is all done as a patron bonus, because we owe the patrons pretty much everything.
Yeah.
We owe you like 72 million hours of content because we got busy and we suck. What if we did, once this is all done, what if we live watched the pilot again? Just to have your reaction to it again now with all of the knowledge.
You just want to see those fancy bathing suits.
I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm not saying. I don't know if we AI upscaled our first season, so we gotta take a closer look.
We will take a closer look only if you promise to wear Dak's wedding dress.
If you send it, I will wear it.
Someone get on that.
Great. All right. Hibernation Pod says, when it aired, this was the only thing that mattered to me that evening. It took precedence over something so strong it shocked me even at the time. I never regretted it, even if it was all short-lived and trivial at most. I really miss these times. Weekly episodes were great. I was just so satisfied, regardless of how it all unfolded. Never let anybody else tell you how to prioritize your time.
A moment enjoyed is never wasted.
Indeed. Just like Keith, though, I also had to reaffirm to myself each time I watched it the whole Deus Ex Machina thing. I never wanted to tell myself it was the cheap way out, but at the same time, I could also convince myself that it exemplified the stakes more clearly, because the Federation Klingon alliance was still losing badly. This would have just sealed the deal for the Dominion. Going back to Rom practically saving the Alpha Quadrant with this minefield idea. The enemy advance is only delayed. Now again, it's simply further delayed. It takes me back to a certain episode of Next Gen, won't say which, where it shows that the good guys are so hopelessly outmatched that it would take nothing less than divine intervention to save them. The space battles and minefield being destroyed, it was just a big wow moment for me the first time. Couldn't look away for a second. Despite their ruthless past, both Dukat and Garrick show what it feels to me like genuine sorrow. Their souls were showing. Indeed. They are both deeply impacted by the loss of Zial. Absolutely 100 self-sealing stem bolts. It can't be anything less for me. It's the series I love even more now than I did then. I feel the same way. I think I appreciate this more every time I do it. Mysterious Anne says, so good! 97, that's like something Jen would say. 97 self-sealing stem bolts from me. The scene with Cisco and the wormhole aliens could be a reference to any number of conversations in different religious scriptures. Oh, this is such a smart comment.
Yeah, it's incredible. Become a patron if only to just chat with these people.
Seriously, they are so much smarter than us. The patrons should revolt and just start their own show.
Sir, shut your mouth.
It's coming. It's coming. Anyway, so could be a reference to any number of conversations in different religious scriptures, but the reference that seems most direct to me is Moses. Some of Moses' conversations with God were almost exactly like the wormhole celestial temple scene in tone and content. Moses is furious with God for good reason and doesn't hold back. Cisco not being allowed to find rest on Bajor is probably also an allusion to Moses not being allowed to enter the Promised Land. I think Mike's take on the scene, that it's a critique of religion, is right, but it's also got this fabulous extra layer of being a critique that's almost directly quoting Exodus. Scripture is full of people screaming at and questioning God and criticizing religion and religious authorities. Deep Space Nine does an inordinately good job of dealing with religion as a thing that exists. Good, bad, weird, helpful, dangerous, whatever they need it to be for the characters and the story, and the allusions and references they use are on point. Such a good point. So, you know what? And I wish you had known my grandfather. I feel like you would have really gotten along well, because he was also very religious and very much a part of his church, but in a progressive church, and was constantly having these philosophical battles and, dealing with scripture and like pulling out this kind of stuff. I think you would have been like best friends. Anyway, go ahead.
This is trivial and not really my reading of religion, but regardless, I always found an interesting dichotomy between the Old Testament and New Testament, because the Old Testament is very much that. It's a lot of infighting, right? It's God being pissy and pissed off at all the time because we don't listen.
And people naturally reacting.
Yeah, and people naturally acting in this conflict. Whereas the New Testament is much more worship-based, and I often thought about, like, well, what chilled him out? And then I look at some of the parents I know. Like, my buddy Wes is a great example. He was kind of a hard-nosed, cranky kind of dude, but having a son completely changed him, and he's so much more forgiving and docile afterwards. I never really saw that softening but when you look at it through a parental eye, right? It's interesting to see how that the hard rod, the staff of God, kind of chilled once the son was there. And it's much more guilt trips, right? Now it's just Jesus going like, "Oh, well, I did all this for you."
Yes, but also there's a shift in the thin-skinnedness of religion that, like, the Old Testament, like, you can fire back, just tell dad to go screw off. But, and this is also different from religion to religion and sect to sect, like whether or not they can take criticism, right? And then it's like, how dare, everything we do is perfect, that kind of, and it's, anyway, that's a whole other can of worms, different podcast, but such a smart comment, it just gets our brains firing. Lastly, Mysterious Ann says, when I was first introducing my family to you, I referred to you as the musical theater Star Trek guys. That's fairly accurate.
It's the niche of niche.
Because you've been so kind and encouraging interactions with Walter, her son, we've also used the title Podcast Uncles.
Can I tell you?
I think.
Can I tell you, since we're all friends and family here, that when I read that, it was probably 8:30 at night. We just put the dog to bed, or for our last walk, and I read it and I got really choked up. That choked me up because we talk about this ad nauseum, but the one thing I never expected to happen was for like the breaching of the line, whereas I would really come to care about the people that we interact with and talk at. and it changed from talking at them to talking with them, and that is a shift I didn't expect and has probably been the most special thing of the whole project.
No, 100%, and I feel the same way. Although we did, I got to pull it up because it made me laugh. We did have somebody.
There's plenty of people who hate us.
Find our parasocial appeal quite off-putting.
Yeah.
So
I think I also got called twitchy this week, but I am quite twitchy. Yeah.
I don't know what's so weird about that.
It's not weird.
But I think I don't know. I didn't understand the comment whether or not it was saying that we were off-putting because we were assuming people had parasocial relationships with us as like a form of our narcissism, feeling like, oh, we're so cool, people think they're our friends. What we're saying is, it's the opposite. We're parasocial with the listeners. We think they're our friends. It's not the other way around. Either way,
I got lost at
it's
parasocial.
fine to be off-putting, but so be it.
It was a big word, and I said, all right, next email.
I understand we're off-putting. I'm with you. Lastly, for
why
the
do you
most
think
part,
we have
though,
one friend?
Literally. For the most part, though, you are now well-known and appreciated throughout the mysterious household as simply Keith and Mike.
I like it.
JD says, y'all are just Keith and Mike. To JD. I have been my friend's therapist for 30 years. Nothing surprises me anymore. There are a lot of people that do not understand how eggs work. Hell, there are a lot of men who don't understand how vaginas work, and it's kind of upsetting.
I missed this comment, I guess.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of comments this week. I guess I could tell you trimmed in the front, Keith, with my haircuts. Keith, I sit in awkward silence while getting my haircut, and I enjoy it. Yeah, I mean, to talking about why I don't get my haircut because of neurodivergence. Yeah.
There was this dude, when I was growing up, I went to this barbershop. I mean, the most Italian barbershop you can even imagine. It was like pictures of Rocky Marciano up,
Of course.
That my barber's name, with broken English, his name was Armando. And there was people
Sophia Loren
smoking in there. It was crazy. But there's this one guy, I always remember, he would come into the shop, he would sit into the chair, he'd bring a Playboy with him, right? Like a Playboy magazine. And he would sit there and look at that Playboy and not say a word to anybody. This old Italian guy would just read his Playboy magazine.
Was he getting his hair cut at all?
Or he would cut his hair while he was looking at Nudie Mag, and then he would pay in cash and walk out. He never said a freaking word to anybody. And I was like, I always thought, I remember being like 7, 8, 9 years old and being like, I can't wait till I'm old enough to come in and read a Playboy.
And be that weirdo?
Yeah.
I mean, do they still make does that still exist? Do
Playboy
they still
magazine?
make hard copy? Yeah.
I don't know. You keep talking. I'll find out.
Yeah, let's find out. I mean, let me see. I could do that. However, I could only do that with the one single copy of Playboy that I own, which is from, I forget what month, but 1982, that I stole from one of my friend's dads in middle school.
Okay, so no, the Playboy has been digital for some years now, but they in 2024 they are now bringing back a print edition. Okay, 2020 is when it stopped doing.
Sure, a lot of things stopped that way. Yeah.
Yeah, in their print magazine, but now they're doing once a year. Their annual edition will be in print.
I see. All right. Well,
Now you only need to buy one a year, Keith.
I have one copy from 1982. That is, but I still have it. I was like, this was like my prized possession for most of middle school. I can't give this up.
There's a bunch of people who collect the covers. They'll get, they have the framed covers and stuff.
I don't quite get the appeal of like collecting that, but I mean, like, I get the appeal.
My
of boobs.
sister-in-law has almost every just so much paper, all the National Geographics.
Oh, that was a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like when we were kids, that was like my parents had a huge collection.
TV
Some of them
guides.
like super antiques.
Yeah.
I mean, I will never be in a position to judge anybody collecting anything.
Yeah, the good thing about collections I've found now, being a homeowner that has a house that is conjoined to two other homes as a townhome, is that physical media is a hell of a sound dampener.
Oh, that's true.
Helps.
Well, and we're in a time now where we might need to. You never think of throwing out all those DVDs? Maybe don't do that so fast.
I wish you guys could see our side texts. Doomsday prepping over here.
No, those are encrypted, folks. All right. Anyway, JD continues. So sorry. I have never been so tempted to send a person a pair of size 56 waist pants. For Mike can't fit into his pants. I dare you. I double dog dare you. Also, he says, I imagine Jen and Jillian sitting in a cafe. Someone at a nearby table asks if they are together, and they say yes. And then they ask if you are married, and Jen turns and says yes, but we leave them in the basement with their toys. That feels right.
It feels so right that I'm uncomfortably, comedically laughing.
I mean, it could work. It said Jon Stewart didn't start with The Daily Show until '99. So I don't know.
Was it Kilborn until
correction
99?
there?
Or did they have an interim host?
I think it was Kilborn straight into Jon Stewart. I don't know.
And then Kilborn went over to Sports Center. It doesn't matter. Let's go.
He did a couple. Yeah. I'm with Mike. I was like, why are you saying baseball over and over like that? Quark is using Cardassian phasers, not Ferengi ones. He took them from the guard on the desk after they used the hypo to knock him out. Now, that is so helpful because the whole cake of it all, or the souffle of it all, didn't quite make sense to me. This fills the wormhole for me.
Say it again?
They used the souffle to knock out the guard to get the phasers that that Quark uses later.
Okay.
So smart. That actually makes perfect sense. That episode of Dr. Crusher and the plasmatic toothbrush entity was still one of my favorites. That's funny. Also, last thoughts on Sisko's plan. I think Sisko had a multi-tiered plan. He went in to face the Dominion fleet, willing to blow up the wormhole if he had to. Also willing to blow up himself and the Defiant if he had to. But he was a bit Kirk here and didn't believe in no-win scenarios. And had a hope in his back pocket that the Prophets would intervene. Agreed, 100 self-sealing stem bolts is exactly right. And that is what you guys had to say about Sacrifice of Angels. But all great arcs must end, and new arcs must begin. With Season 6, Episode 7, You Are Cordially Invited, which aired on November 10th, 1997. They just went straight in. The next episode, we were still listening. Today's a very appropriate. It would be hard for this candle to stay lit here on this windy day in New Jersey. But
like
Elton John,
a candle in the wind. Now Dax has got to put on that really hot wedding dress.
Hot?
I thought it was hot.
Did you?
I did.
Is that why you want me to wear it?
Mm-hmm.
The top movie. that got weird. The top movie is, I think, of all the movies out there, and there's some other good ones in this category. I think this might have been the number one most misunderstood and underappreciated film of our generation. And was critically and universally reviled because the world didn't get it, even though they should have. And now it is seen in a very different light. Can you imagine what that movie would be?
No.
Giant budget, sci-fi.
Waterworld?
No. From the director and producer and writer of RoboCop.
I don't got it.
Which people understood. It was Starship Troopers. Fantastic.
Good movie.
Good satire. Movie. It's a satire, folks.
Okay.
And people did not get it. And they thought it was terrible. And guess what? It's great. You just have to understand that it's a satire. But anyway, it might have been something I added to the archive just today. Because it's a very enjoyable film. Mike, what was enjoyable on TV this week?
Well, Keith, some interesting things to note. Number one, on ABC, there was a special called Home Invasion Magic, which seems interesting. I guess they made people's belongings disappear.
You invade a home and then do some close-up, like, hey, pick a card and I won't murder your family.
Actually, it turns out I had to dig in because it had, I like magic and I had to know what that was. It was Penn and Teller's first special. And what they would do is they were going into businesses randomly and people's houses and doing close-up magic. So yes, it's exactly what you just described.
Okay, well.
The San Francisco 49ers took out the Philadelphia Eagles 24-12. I remember watching that with my father because we were conflicted because we were a 49ers family because my dad lost money on the Eagles early on and we weren't allowed to cheer for the Eagles when my dad was alive. So he just picked the 49ers because Joe Montana.
Sure.
And it wasn't until after he died I became an Eagles fan. That is true. That is a true fact.
So, all right, let me guess. This is probably Steve Young still near the end because he played through 98. Mm-hmm. This is between Randall Cunningham and Donovan McNabb. Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling it's like Bubby Brister?
Probably Bubby Brister, but it's still Buddy Ryan, if I'm not mistaken. Or are we Kotite era?
I feel like it's Kotite.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right.
Also, there's a show. We run into these shows, Keith, and I ask if we remember. It was airing on NBC at 8:30, so a good time slot, called Fired Up. Fired Up. Do you know anything about that? Do you remember anything about that?
Not in the slightest.
It ran for about, let's see, it looks like it got a full order. It didn't get through it, so it got 19 episodes of its 26-episode run, looks like. And let's see who's in it. We got Sharon Lawrence, Leah Remini, okay. Mark Faurheiser, Jonathan Banks, a younger Jonathan Banks, and Mark Davis. Okay, didn't know nothing about it. Couldn't even tell you what it's about.
For those playing at home, it was Steve Young, but Bubby Brister was gone at this point. We were in the Ty Detmer era.
Yeah.
And Bobby Hoying. But you had Ricky Waters.
Yeah.
Previously with the 49ers as your running back. Garrison Hurst running back for the San Francisco 49ers. And your coach was Ray Rhodes.
Ray Rhodes, yes. The Ray Rhodes era. Keith, quickly, I thought I could
We're not doing anything quickly today.
I looked for a picture of my 17th birthday, and I couldn't quite pinpoint one because my birthday would have been 3 days from the airing of this episode. But I did find this gem from June of 97, so not far behind. I'm just gonna bring it up here. Hold on.
Just bring it. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I did find this gem of a band shot. I was playing in my band, and we recorded a live album.
Space 8 the Mafia.
Yeah, from June of 97. It was on a cassette, and one of my friends has the cassette and freaking scanned this for me. So.
Wait, it's 8? Like I ate something?
Yeah,
I always thought it was 8, like the number 8.
Well, we eventually changed it because it didn't make any sense. But yeah.
I don't think it makes sense either way. But
no, you're right.
Look at you in your tuxedos. Wait,
Crazy.
Which one is?
I'm the top
yeah,
middle.
you're the dead center. Yeah, top
Yeah.
middle. Okay.
What's funny is that you can't read it, but in the credits here, at one point, we actually apologized for the audio quality because it was like recorded off a VHS rip. So.
Wow. Can we hear some of it?
No, I don't have that. If
Oh,
I had the cassette, I don't even know how I would play it for you.
Oh, that's true. Somebody's got to. All right, you got to get all that stuff digitized.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of things that need to be digitized, an upscaled Hello World. What was Voyager doing this week? Year of Hell Part 2. Not surprisingly, coming after Part 1. Excited to get to that in like 3 years.
I think I have the Voyager upscales.
Do you? I don't think they're to me yet.
Okay, I do have them, I believe.
Yeah, actually, if you throw them in the Dropbox, that way I can add them to my Plex. That'd be awesome. All right, meeting on the air. All right, so You Are Cordially Invited was directed by David Livingston, who last directed Dr. Bashir, I presume. It was written by Ronald D. Moore, the great Ronald D. Moore. And now it's time for the most trivial segment.
Now, Keith, waste your time.
With what?
With trivial trivia.
All right, so if I'd had more time this week, I would have pulled this out and given everybody a silent clip because it's hilarious. Go in and watch it. Aaron Eisenberg considered this the most stressful episode he ever shot because the script called for his Ferengi character Nog to participate in social dancing.
Is that why they were doing I was wondering why they were doing the Lion Cub dance move.
He had no idea how to do that convincingly. As it happened, Eisenberg improvised something suitable and was horrified that the director wanted to focus on him dancing as opposed to simply put him as part of the crowd. There is a phenomenal scene where he is in the foreground, slightly out of focus, doing his dance while Odo and Kira talk. Go back, watch it again, just focus on him. It will make your day. Regardless, he performed his clumsy creation, and the whole cast and crew, plus the cast of Voyager, invited to see some of the shooting, found it hilarious in a welcome fashion for the story, and it decided to edit the scene for greater prominence.
It was featured, and it's like where it should have gone to commercial, it lingered for an extra couple seconds.
So great, and I'm always that guy. Like, you want to see somebody do something stupid? Right here. To ensure the right level of energy for the party scenes, David Livingston staged an actual party, including live music. He did it because this meant the actors had to shout on set to be heard, which add an air of realism to the scene. The producers had considered, and I wish they'd been able to do this, having the Enterprise crew from Next Gen appear in non-speaking cameos as guests at Worf's wedding. But only Frakes and LeVar Burton were available at the time since they had offices on the Paramount lot. Since the entire crew were unavailable, the idea was dropped. Such a bummer. The USS Sutherland, mentioned off-screen, is the ship that Data captained in Redemption Part 2. This episode includes the first and only appearance of the modified dress uniform before switching to dress whites introduced in Star Trek Insurrection. This, let me see, Dax mentions Captain Shelby of the Sutherland owing her a favor. Most likely, Captain Elizabeth Shelby from Next Generation's Best of Both Worlds. You've met Shelby.
Mm-hmm.
Great little reference there. And during the second take of the scene where Dax punches Sorella, Terry Farrell accidentally punched Shan Cochran right in the darn face. Has to happen. And the last piece of this, and I just want to stick this in everybody's head as we watch the rest of the series. This is the time where we find out exactly how old Dax is. And if you type it into your little calculator, from the year that the episode takes, the Dax symbiont was born 2018. So right now, in our universe, there's a 6-year-old Dax running around right here today. That's fun to think about.
Cool.
You want to know who else?
So
is
that
fun to
worm,
think-
that worm in JFK Jr.'s brain?
Dax is anti-vax? Is that what's happening? You can't vaccinate Dax?
That's why she came out and started a career.
Woo! Dax is the worm in RFK's brain.
Yeah, that's where we are.
That is the best comment that's ever been made on the show, and somebody needs to Photoshop that immediately.
JD's already completed it.
already
it's in the
done.
email
Already done.
Yeah.
Whew, you want to know who isn't the worm in our brains, but definitely the worm in our hearts and and in our wallets?
Oh, we would be the worm in their wallet. That's
true.
That's Brian Kimball Beersock, Peter Bank, Frank Rinch, Quarks Bar, Yanba, Ryan Chesley, Andre, Romulan Shoulder Pad Enjoyer, Joshua Cronin, Andrew Hayes, Alan, and the Mysterious, not to forget Walter and the entire Mysterious household, Worf's big old boot shivs, Charles Babbage, Harry Pothead, Anton Thies, Carl Fisher, Alan, Girton, Deborah Scott, Brian, from Video Game Drive-By, CRM Productions, Nikolay Ivanovich Lobachevsky, YouTube Viewer, James Hubbard, Hibernation Pod, Miri Holcomb, Odos, Bucket, Lost Emu, Scotty B, Merritt Neath, JD, whom we love and adore, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell, Frank Rinch, Pat, Joshua Cronin, Kevin Miles, and people who have joined in at that $1 level, just as important as everyone else. We've got Zontar1, Jerome Gibson, Engineer Maynard, Wyatt Eldridge, Lutz Kremer, Bolian for Soup. Don't forget Chancellor Jen. She's with us each and every moment of my life. And of course, you can join the team and one day, perhaps, get your name on the Hall of Fame. These fine people have gone above and beyond. We adore them. We respect them. We send them our undying gratitude. You can join the team, patreon.com/K and M.
Okay. Our guest stars this week are J.G. Hertzler as Martok, Mark Warden as Alexander, Shannon Cochran as Sorella, Chase Masterton as Lita, Aaron Eisenberg doing the dance as Nog, and Max Grodenchik as Rom, who I don't even think has a line. Okay, let's go into our screening room. All right, in our teaser, it's a happy time on Deep Space Nine. The war continues, but the station is filled with relieved folks returning to their previous lives. We find out that Deep Space Nine is now headquarters to the 9th Fleet. It, of course, should be headquarters, and so we no longer need the big space station because we're already on one. Kira is really happy to be greeting Sisko instead of Dukat in the morning. Sisko goes to meet with Martok, and he has helped Martok be promoted to be the supreme commander of said 9th Fleet. Now, I wonder about this, and I suppose it would work this way, right? That if he's the commander of the 9th Fleet, correct me if I'm wrong, is a combined Federation and Klingon fleet. So he would be in charge of some Federation folks in the same way that Admiral Ross was in charge of some Klingon folks, at least in large tactical stuff, yeah? I would assume. Somebody explain. Anyway, Martok, not happy. Because when you get promoted, paperwork. But it does allow him to remain here on the station with Worf as his second in command. But he complains that Worf's continued obsession with his wedding and his son Alexander, who now serves with him under the crew. And Alexander is here on the station, regaling Dax and Worf with tales of his hilarious ineptitude. He is the dum-dum mascot of the Rotaran now. And I think this is such a more likable version of Alexander. Like this self-aware, sort of dumb. He's a klutz or whatever, and it's a great contrast with how uptight Worf is. That it was like, oh, he was actually funny here, and him like the sort of non-angry dumb version of Alexander. I'm like, yeah, I'm on board with this. You did not think so?
I'm like 80% there. I mean, I get it. I like that at least he's in on the joke, but they kind of play him such a fool, and not like a jester. Like he's a controllable fool. Like he's a comedian. He's more just like like you said, a dumb. I mean, he doesn't do anything right, and like Worf's just cool with it. And I guess I could get on board with all that, and maybe this is intentional, but they plant the seed about him leaving the ship, and you're like, well, he's dead. Right? Like the second he leaves our care or Worf's care, like he done.
That's funny.
That's I don't know. It just seemed dark to me, but okay.
Well, we know where Mike's head is at. Yeah. So, like you said, he's being transferred to another ship, and he's heading out in a week. Quark, meanwhile, comes up and tries to sell Worf and Dax on having the wedding in his bar. Worf continues to be a hard no, but then Dax has the idea. She thinks, let's get married, right here, right now, before Alexander leaves. Worf thinks for a moment, then agrees, and tells Alexander he's the best man. Folks, we're gonna have a wedding.
Keith, this thing, it's hard not to think about the holodeck as let's be frank, a porno palace, right?
Sure.
But forget about vacationing. Destination wedding? Why bother? Just have it at the holodeck, right? And I'm sure you could beam people in from all over. Like you don't have to just travel to Deep Space Nine. Couldn't they? I assume you could have holopad technology where you could be in they could bring Ben's dad in and have him just hollow in, right?
That's a really good question. And we've touched on that a little bit. Remember on the Defiant getting the hollow emitters to
right.
communicate that. And so I would think we could definitely conceivably do it. I don't know about the range. On like the data loss in the packet, like whether if you were super far away there'd be too much of a buffer.
And we'll forget them then. Can we just not replicate them? Like, can we not just bring in can we not have the holodeck
like a fake one?
Yeah,
sure.
You could bring my dad. Like you could have people who have passed on. You could have whoever you want at your wedding.
You certainly could.
Yeah.
Like I have Obama at my wedding. Really happy for you, Keith.
Yeah, why not?
I don't think it's gonna work.
You're like, you guys programmed in a pessimistic Obama? Thanks a lot. That was Twigs. Twigs did that.
Hi, it's
for sure.
Pessimistic Obama. Do you have any advice you'd want?
Well, ever since he had to do that meeting with Trump on his way out, he's been shitty ever since.
Not gonna work. This is a terrible idea.
It's all for nothing.
All for nothing. Just wasting your time. Spin on the wheels. Go do something else. All right.
Keith, you should have a pessimistic Obama cameo. It's just Keith doing pessimistic Obama messages for people.
Just here to wish you happy birthday, Steve. It's probably not going to be good, though.
Could be the last one.
Probably, at your age, chances of testicular cancer, very high.
That's Star Trek.
Oh, God, where are we? So, in Act 1, Jesus, being a good friend, Kira checks in on Dax. Worf has planned everything in the wedding, down to the color of Dax's shoes, and Kira naturally wants to make sure Dax is on board with all of this. Dax reassures her that she's been married 5 times already, 3 as a bride, 2 as a groom, and is happy to let Worf get his dream wedding. I think I like her being a good friend. I like checking it. I like addressing that for the audience.
Also to note, understated, Nana's performance in this episode, the sheer tonal shift from the past few weeks to now, the lightness in her, the airiness. I mean, they make a direct comment on it in the opening teaser, but throughout the episode, she has just a different vibe. And it's, I took note.
Well, she's no longer occupied, so that's good.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just saying, like, it's not just in the story, right? The actors are
Right.
carrying that through line.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, meanwhile, Dax clocks Odo ducking Kira. They have been avoiding each other since the occupation ended, because they have a lot to talk about. Yeah, they do. Meanwhile, Worf summons his dude friends for his bachelor party. Martok, Sisko, Bashir, and O'Brien are very excited, but only Martok knows what he's signing up for, and he advises everyone to get some rest.
Yeah, they all think they're going to Vegas.
No, everyone else thinks that, though.
Yeah.
And he explains that while they're doing this, Dax will be trying to impress Martok's wife, because the mistress of a great house must approve all marriages. So Dax has to get the stamp of approval from Sorella, who strides out of the airlock, cold and regal. And this is one of the most quoted couplets in Deep Space Nine history. He says, "My lady, General, you've put on weight, and your hair is going gray. My deterioration is proceeding apace. I thought you'd be in your grave by now. I shall endeavor to die this year, if possible. My deterioration is proceeding apace."
Hashtag me too.
What an amazing line. So she meets Sisko and pieces out. And Sisko is like, but Martok is all goo-goo eyes for her, of course. Magnificent, isn't she? Meanwhile, Worf is nervous and salty about Dax's preparation for Sorella's visit. She arrives and immediately throws Worf out. She's instantly cold and dismissive of Dax. And she says, "Your worthiness to join our house will now be judged according to the traditions of my family." "I'm prepared, my lady. I doubt that. A Klingon woman would find it difficult to gain my favor for an alien. It will be likely be impossible. I like a challenge. I will not have my authority challenged by you. That's not what I meant. If you cannot say what you mean, say nothing at all." And I just wrote, shout out to my ex-in-laws, who are wildly cooler than that. Because it's kind of unfriendly.
I remember I had to. So Jen's dad had passed away, and I'm not big on like tradition and stuff. But I knew that her family would, before I asked her to marry me, I should chat. I just felt like I needed to pass that respect to somebody. But she's got five siblings, and so I had a choice to make. Because one thing I learned about her family quick is that if you say a secret or something you'd like to keep from one of them for a couple days to one person in the chain, before the phone call is over, everyone knows. And so I didn't want to ruin the surprise of it, but also I didn't want to. Oh, that was a tough choice to figure out who to call. But anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. Interesting.
I figured it out. It worked out.
So in Act 2, later on the Return, Worf asks Martok, "What's the deal with your wife?" And he says, "You never told me that your wife was opposed to this marriage. Sorella is a woman of strong convictions. She believes that by bringing aliens into our families, we risk losing our identities as Klingons. That is a prejudiced, xenophobic view. We are Klingons, Worf. We don't embrace other cultures, we conquer them. If someone wishes to join us, they must honor our traditions and prove themselves worthy of wearing the crest of a great house. Jadzia is worthy. Of course she is. She is an honorable woman and a formidable warrior. We should say that to Sorella. That's not such a good idea. I don't want her to think I'm interfering in her dominion. Then perhaps I should speak to Sorella. Coming from me, it would not seem like a challenge to her authority. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Why? Well, the truth is, Sorella doesn't like you much either. Me? But don't let that bother you. I had every right to bring you into the family, and she's accepted the fact that there's nothing she can do about it. How comforting. And they say you have no sense of humor. It's just a great scene. Really does tell everything. Meanwhile, the bachelor party is beginning, and Bashir and O'Brien wonder when they start drinking. And I love this. I thought this was another good thing about Alexander. O'Brien says, it can't all be fun and games. I'm sure there's going to be some ritual we have to go through before the party begins. There's going to be a party, isn't there? And Alexander says, you asking me? I can barely say my name in Klingon.
That is good.
That made me laugh. And also, like, helps understand the character. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, the Klingon party is just really 5 trials of pain. They're in the heat, and they're not allowed to eat for 4 days. And what are the other 5 trials? Blood, pain, sacrifice, anguish, and death. And Bashir says, sounds like a marriage, all right. And O'Brien says, how would you know? Which is, like, again, I think just like the dialogue is written so well here, because it's always like the dum-dum who's not married who does like the old ball and chain joke, who doesn't understand anything about it. And I love that Bashir says it, the little bit of dum-dum still, and O'Brien calls him on it.
Dude, I made the ball and chain joke one time, like as a stupid dad joke. Woo! Let me tell you how many times I'll do that again.
Yeah. Zero times. Mm-hmm. If you want to hold on to your balls and chain.
I lost my balls for a few days, I'll tell you.
Meanwhile, Quark is setting up the wedding in the bar. Jake comes in with great news. He's sold his first book. Quark, of course, wants to know what he got for it. And he says it's just a figure of speech. The Federation News Service is going to publish the book of my stories about the life during Dominion rule, but they're not paying me. Yup, Jake, you're a real author now.
You're Amazon published, baby.
You're Amazon published, and let me tell you, I got 3 books back there, and let me tell you about the tens of dollars I've made on them. So they wonder what's happening in the Klingon bachelor party. Well, what's happening? Suffering. Alexander has already passed out from the heat, and soon Martok and Worf are singing a duet. And honestly, they're pretty decent singers.
Yeah, not bad.
Martok has a lovely tenor. And it's interesting that Klingon songs, for the music nerds out there, make liberal use of parallel fifths. Klingons do not care about your soft Federation voice leading. It's a joke for like 2 people out there. The suffering is happening with Dax and Sorella, too. Sorella is torturing Dax, and Dax is getting fed up, but she's jacked up. We know that. Dax says, you know how heavy those things are? A Klingon woman would not complain. I wouldn't have to. She'd have done it. I wouldn't have complained if you wouldn't have made a Klingon woman do it 3 times in a row. I wouldn't have to. She would have done it correctly the first time. End this now, Jadzia. Go back to your own people. They will tolerate your failings and your weakness in a way that a Klingon family never will. In our house, you will always be an alien, an outsider. At best, you'd be an object of pity. But you'd never be accepted, never an equal, because you can never be truly one of us. I'm sure there's some folks out there who had some in-laws talking like that. But it's... You think of poor Dax here, who is twisting herself into a pretzel to give Worf what he wants and to give all this traditional stuff, and then just to be, like, beaten to death by all of this, and, like, being punished. She's dealing with, like, real punishment while the men go on in their, like, fake punishment game. So the next morning, an exhausted O'Brien and Bashir discuss what horrors are coming for the next night. It's gonna be bloodletting. Remember, Bashir, remember that part about attacking the bridal couple at the end of the ceremony? Do you think we'll just get one shot at them, or can we keep going? And O'Brien says, in a Klingon ceremony, I'd imagine it'd be more violent. The more violent it is, the more Worf will appreciate it. And of course, we're setting up the tag at the end, which I thought was pretty funny. Meanwhile, Dax is now being forced to tell the story of every generation of Sorella's family. And she can't help but add a little historical context, which is fascinating. And I again, like, little details like this I think are so good in this episode. And Dax says, well, that's where we run into a little problem. You see, I did some research. I discovered that when Emperor Rekla was killed, all the family members of the Imperial family were also put to death, including your relative Shenara. Then the third dynasty was founded 10 years later. A new group of Klingons were given the titles and names of the original Imperial family in order to create the illusion of an unbroken line. So the woman you think of as your 23rd maternal grandmother isn't related to you at all. Your real ancestor's name was Kanara, one of the concubines living outside in the Imperial stables. My grandmother's name was Shenara, and that's maybe what was handed down from generation to generation, but it has no basis in fact. But then, who cares about facts? The Chronicle says you have Imperial blood in your veins, and that's exactly what we're going to keep telling everyone. And I just think, like, in canon, it's fascinating, it's great, tells a lot about the Klingons, but also, like, that is the world we live in, right? Whether it's, you know, the story, our country's history, or our family history, or religious history, there's so much rewriting that happens that we all just choose to pretend, you know, like, it's December, a couple weeks away from Christmas. The December 25th, right? That's when Jesus was born, right? Oh, no, actually, that was a pagan ritual they just glommed onto. And, like, all of these things, like, we just accept as fact and history, when really it's just for our own convenience we tell ourselves these stories.
Well, it's interesting because this scene, having revisited it on the kind of our summary here, it actually cleans up a wormhole I have from before. So I'm not going to even bring it up. I'll mention in my final kind of take. But I do think it is the flaw. One of the minor flaws of the episode is the edit is kind of screwy. I think this scene is way too early in the episode, and I'll explain why later. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So later, Jake runs into Kira, and they talk about Dax holding her own wild party that night. And they're repeating the beat, and they repeat the beat of Odo ducking Kira. Meanwhile, it's time for the ritual bleeding at the bachelor party. Then we go to Dax's party, and it is indeed a wild one. There's a traditional Tongan fire dancer who everyone is impressed by, particularly Lita. Oh yes, and Rom clocks that. There's several drummers, and Dax
but I love
plays
how,
along. Go ahead.
As far as quote unquote talk about tradition and such, they always have an opportunity where Dax is very kind of like free with her sexual leanings, and so is Lita, and though it appears that they've got a monogamous relationship, at least they flirt with the colors of other things. It's cool.
Yeah, and it's an interesting little beat there. Like, is she talking about hooking up with this guy? Like, what? Because I feel like Worf would not be okay with that. Unclear. You know, it's not a wormhole for me, but it is a little bit of ambiguity there, which I don't hate. It's interesting.
I think I just clocked it to, like, Dax is she's feeling salty because she's being forced down a very specific path, a very, like, rigid.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so I understand her saltiness for sure.
It's not just, so she's, like, leaning into her. It's like you had a fight with your girlfriend, so you go to the party and you flirt just to.
She's definitely getting the lap dance.
Or that.
Yeah. So the drummer's playing for real, and Dax plays along like Richard Bay eats.
Not the best. Not the best bongoing I've ever seen.
That's
because on set they were like, "You got to stop touching that drum. We're picking up everything."
She's like, nowhere near it. It's pretty funny. So we cut to Bashir and O'Brien hanging from their arms over the fire pit. And Bashir says, "It's working. I'm having a vision about the future. I can see it so clearly." "What is it?" "I'm gonna kill Worf." "That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna kill Worf. It's all so clear to me now. Kill Worf. Kill Worf. Kill Worf. Kill." It's very funny.
Very funny.
We've all been there when our buddy puts ours in the. I won't use any real examples. So back at the party, Odo enters with security to deal with a noise complaint. He runs into Kira while Max Grodenchik does a phenomenally hilarious dance in the foreground. You can see a little bit of it here on the screen gross, but it's so good. Go
it's
watch
like
it.
a wild cat thing. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, he's like, it's what I would do. So Kira tells Odo the party's going to go
We
along.
both know you would do the latest rag.
I don't want to talk about that. Kira tells the party is going to go on as long as I want to, and pulls Odo aside and says, we have a lot to talk about. So they head off to a quieter part of the party. Dax, meanwhile, hits on an exotic dancer when, of course, Sorella enters. It is time for the Brennan ritual. I'm busy. Busy acting like a Rysian slut. I'm only going to ask you to leave once. You will come with me now and perform the Brennan ritual to my satisfaction, or I will cancel your wedding. They, of course, shout at each other in Klingon. Sorella pulls a knife, and Dax punches her out. Sorella storms off, and Dax tells everyone to resume partying. It's not going well.
No,
not going well.
no.
So the next morning, a gravely hungover Dax wakes up. Atua staggers out and runs into Worf. Not happy. You're mad. I'm concerned. Well, I'm hungover. Can we talk later? We have a very serious problem. Sorella has canceled the wedding. You have been forbidden to join the House of Martok. So I won't get invited to the family picnics. I'll live. Fair. Then we overhear Kira and Odo still talking in the next room, unaware that they had talked all night long.
That's
Now,
a long time.
Oh, we've all done it.
Yeah, but usually like with your girl on the phone.
It's usually with a girl that I'd like to be with, but don't have the, and she's waiting all night for me to make the move, and I'm waiting all the night for her to make the move, and then the sun comes up and we go away. That is a true story that's happened multiple times. Yeah, that's my life. Anyway, so, all right, so I think this is the most controversial part of this episode, right? That all of the Odo-Kira repair that needs to happens off screen here in this moment. What did you think about this?
It didn't bother me. I mean, he mentioned it. Like, he mentioned before, like, I'm sorry. Yes, the stakes were huge, but I think she has their previous relationship. I don't know. It just didn't bother me. It struck me as exactly that. Like, they wanted to be friends. They wanted to reconcile. They just didn't know how to breach it. And so it happened during the party, whatever they talked about. Like, what do we serve by seeing it, right? Like, we know we just returned to their love. I get it. I get where people be upset because it's kind of like a reset. But
well, I don't mind them resetting.
But also,
me,
I don't know that it. See, I mean, maybe you can consider that slightly a spoiler, Keith. I didn't think this was the end. Like, we quickly just fixed everything.
Yeah.
I just thought this was like a step in that process.
Well, yeah, that's fair. And to be perfectly honest, I don't exactly remember whether we get back into it. But for me, Odo's betrayal, and, you know, we've had lots of discussion about the level of agency that he had. And I think that's a fair point for him to make to her. I'm still mad about it. Like, I'm still mad about it. And so it's not so much that Kira needs more. I need more from Odo here. And so I think it's asking the audience to do a lot of repair without hearing what he said. I need to hear what he says. I need to, like, get a better explanation as to what happened.
I'm, yes, but also I'm, an actions speak louder than words type of guy, and he showed his true colors last week. He helped us out in that.
Well, I think he did, but he showed his true colors in both ways. Because the minefield would never have gone down if he hadn't done this. Like, Rom very easily could have been executed. And like any number, like it happened to work out okay.
I mean, I totally hear you, but like if you had betrayed me, but then I found out you were in a sex cult, I'd be like, well,
Were they hot?
that's the thing. Like if it was just sex, I'd probably be salty, but sex cult, I'd have a little more compassion.
Well, I'm not saying I wouldn't have compassion, but you'd probably want to hear what I had to say about it.
Yeah, and if we talked for like 12 hours in a closet, I'd feel like we probably figured it out.
But if I'm Jen, and you didn't hear this conversation, and you're like, it's good. Be like, oh, no, I need a little more.
Let's be honest. If it was us, we would podcast the whole thing. Everybody would hear the conversation.
It's 100% true. 100% true.
No, I would absolutely say that is. I can see where that would. It didn't bother me because it's really not what this episode's about, and I think it happened so fast that I didn't put it the emphasis. I didn't read the emphasis on it. That it was sort of a shortcut, but I see that.
Yeah, I mean,
But it's not the only conflict. Like, you're going to see my biggest issue later is the other giant conflict resolution that needs to take place is between Mrs. Martok and Dax, and we don't see that. We just jump right to that. We skip that scene entirely and go right to the wedding.
Oh, yeah, that didn't bother me at all.
Yeah, it's funny. That did bother me. But
because, we don't know her. Doesn't really matter. We
but
know
it does
they
matter.
hashed it out.
She clearly has the power to cancel the
She does, but
wedding.
we know, I can trust Dax can find the right thing to say to turn that wheel, blah, 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 blah.
I don't
That's not
know.
hard to
See, it's
imagine.
funny. I think it would have been powerful because she stands up to her when she knocks her out. So I think that plays a factor. And also, we forget that there's blackmail. She discovered that her aunt or her blood lineage isn't. But that happened so early in the episode, I forgot about it until we rewatched it. So that's why I think the edit is actually. Had we cut back to that scene and we see them interact and she either blackmails her or she respects her because she punched her in the face, I think it's more satisfying. It did bother me that we just cut that.
I think, all right, so, I mean, we're well into stem bolts here, but, I think I would have, I didn't miss that scene, but I wouldn't mind to have seen that scene. The comedic stuff with the torturing and the bachelor party, great, it's funny, whatever. I think we spent too much time on it.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have seen
especially since there's no payoff.
A couple of moments from Odo and Kira's conversation, and then a moment of that would have been fine. And I think there was room in the episode to do it. But I think to play devil's advocate, had we seen the Odo Kira conversation, that'd be the A story. For me, at least.
What they could have given us at least was, because what we get is peas and carrots, instead of give us a line, give us what are they talking about? Give us just a snapshot, a sliver, something as they're exiting, or I'll see you at dinner tonight, or something showing what they've established in there. But we don't get that, so there is a bit of an unsatisfying.
I think we get a lot with body language there, but
for sure, especially from Nana, she's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
I just want a one sentence from Odo. I know I really screwed up. I didn't have full agency, but I'm really sorry.
I was thinking with my goo pecker.
No, exactly. It's just I'm not even sure how much agency I had. I'm confused about the whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't, what I did was wrong. I never should have happened. I'm sorry. I think that's all we really need.
But that would have happened much sooner than the 12 here in the closet.
Well, that would have been the opening statement.
Mm-hmm.
And then you spend 12 hours explaining the nuances of that. Anyway.
She's clearly sitting directly on an actual thing you can buy at Walmart right now. Or at Target.
Yeah, and does she not have any chairs? I guess it's her closet they're in?
Yeah.
She's a walk-in closet on a space station.
That is a Tupperware, just straight from...
It's a bin, yeah.
That is a bin.
Yeah, it's good deals on those at Costco, if you're wondering.
It's so good that they last into the future.
That's true. That's true. You could still... They lasted longer, almost as long as Dax.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, anyway, they leave. Worf is super pissed. They're mad at each other, and Worf calls off the wedding. So in Act 5, Bashir
Which
and
is
O'Brien...
a recycled beat, right? We had that before with him, early in their courtship, because she wasn't following, the...
Well, they broke up. They didn't break off the wedding.
Right. You're right.
So Bashir and O'Brien arrive in Quark's, ready to resume their punishment when Quark tells them the wedding is off. And here's another thing I did not like. O'Brien says, off? Why? Quark says, she says it's because he's a pig-headed, stubborn man who puts tradition before something else. He says it's because she's a frivolous, emotional woman who refuses to take him and his culture seriously. You can see the problem. They're both right. Exactly. Disagree with the second part. I think Worf, being a pig-headed, stubborn man who puts tradition before everything else, agree. I don't think Dax is being a frivolous, emotional woman who refuses to take his culture seriously at all. She has demonstrated over and over and over and over again how seriously she takes the Klingon culture. She's doing all of these rituals. She's doing all these things. Mm-hmm. We're having a Klingon ceremony. We're not having we've seen Worf dip not even a fingernail into Trill culture. Mm-hmm. Dax has done nothing but show immense respect to the Klingon culture.
And I think we agree with that. I think you need to relax. You need to declutch your pearls, because clearly it's coming from Quark, who is an anti-feminist Ferengi, and also has the hots for Dax. So clearly his.
Oh, I don't have a problem with Quark saying it. I have a problem with O'Brien agreeing.
Oh, it was O'Brien who said they're both right?
Yes.
I thought it was Quark said that. Okay. Well, all right.
Which, when it's seconded by another major character, it is the opinion of the show. And I disagree with that opinion.
Yeah, well, then you know what I would love, Keith? You know what would make me feel a lot better about O'Brien?
Some dinner?
Some Keiko.
Yeah, fair enough.
Where's Keiko at? Where's your family, sir?
Family's inconvenient. They're expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
all right, Keith,
but
I officially allow you to reclutch your pearls.
Thank you. Anyway, Bashir and O'Brien, all they care about is eating everything. In Worf's quarters, Martok goes to talk him down. So we now have a nice couplet of the two best friends. Worf says, anyone can see that we are hopelessly mismatched. She is Trill, I am Klingon. She's had 5 marriages, this is my first. When she's laughing, I'm somber. When she's happy, when I'm happy, she's crying. She plays Tonga with a Ferengi bartender. I can barely stand him. She mocks everything while I take everything seriously. She is nothing like the woman I thought I'd marry. Hit me with some wisdom, Martok. He says, we are not accorded the luxury of choosing the women we fall in love with. Do you think Sorella is anything like the woman I thought I'd marry? She is a mercurial, arrogant, prideful woman who shares my bed far too infrequently for my taste. And yet, I love her deeply. We Klingons often tout our prowess in battle and our desire for honor and glory above all else. But how hollow is the sound of victory without someone to share it with. And honor gives little comfort to a man alone in his home and in his heart. Back in Quark's, O'Brien and Bashir get ready to stuff their faces with a comical amount of food, but of course, before they can eat, Sisko and Martok tell them to stop. Worf is apologizing to Dax, so the wedding will be back on. But then, also, Mike, I know how much you like extra-ing. Take a look at that shot. Worf says, nope, she refused to change her mind. The wedding is still off. I like it not being resolved there. Mm-hmm. And I like Dax being the mother of dragons here in this shot.
Yeah.
So Sisko knows it's his cue for best friend duty. Dax says, do you know what he wanted me to do? He wanted me to go crawling on my hands and knees to Sorella and beg for her forgiveness. Beg her. Me. I was once ambassador to the Federation ambassador to the Klingon Empire. I negotiated the Khitomer Accords before Worf was even born. And Sisko says, Curzon negotiated the Accords. And I've got news for you, old man. You're not Curzon anymore. What the hell is that supposed to mean? It means you can't expect Sorella to treat you like Curzon just because you carry his memories. To her, you're just a young woman who's decided to marry into her family. If you have to get down on your knees and kiss Sorella's boots, then that's what you're going to have to do. You know what? From the moment you decided to marry Worf, you've known that sooner or later you'd have to bow down and show her respect. The respect she's due. This is all Worf's fault. Worf and his traditional Klingon wedding. He may have let this wedding business go to his head, but you're 356 years old. Compared to you, Worf's just a kid. If you can't abide by Klingon traditions, then you shouldn't have let yourself fall in love with him in the first place. And you are in love with him. Interesting what people think about that line of reasoning. We'll continue. I wasn't looking to fall in love. I was perfectly happy by myself. I had friends, a career, adventure. Then one day, this Klingon with a bad attitude walks into my life. And the next thing I know, I'm getting married. After 356 years and 7 lifetimes, I'm still leading with my heart. That's what I've always loved about you, and I think that's why Worf loves you too. Whatever happened to that young callow ensign I used to know? The one who turned to me for advice all the time. You know, the one with hair. And Sisko says, he grew up. Great line. Dax says, I guess it's time for me to grow up too. And I'd love the 2 friendship beats here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we cut straight to the wedding. And we see pretty cool Klingon wedding. Worf and Dax dressed in sweet Klingon robes that I think are some of the most cosplayed outfits out there now. The Klingon ceremony is pretty cool, playing out an ancient love story that concludes with killing of the gods. And Sorella finishes with, and when 2 hearts began to beat together, they filled the heavens with a terrible sound. For the first time, the gods knew fear. They tried to flee, but it was too late. The Klingon hearts destroyed the gods who created them and turned the heavens into ashes. To this very day, no one can oppose the beating of 2 Klingon hearts. And then to Dax, not even me. They exchange a look. Dax has been accepted. Worf, son of Moog, does your heart beat only for this woman? Yes. And will you swear to join with her and stand with her against all who oppose you? I swear. And they're married. Let the beatings begin. What did you think of the wedding ceremony?
I thought it was great. It's cool. Looked cool. It was equal parts like sci-fi, some high fantasy drama, and then a nice little comedic beat at the end.
And I love for the Klingon world building that like the love story is them murdering their own gods. Yeah. That's the most romantic thing you can think of. So I thought that was really funny. All right, there it is. You are cordially invited to the AlamarEmmys. Okay, Mike. We're married.
Mm-hmm.
Dax, it is the first wedding of 2 major cast members in Star Trek history.
I think the best moment for me is as you said, the friendship couplet, specifically Ben and Dax. Because Ben has been so jovial this whole time, and I think it's cool that how he can take a hard line with her, and it never reads as sort of because here's what one of the things the show has done so well. It's like sort of ungendered Dax in a way.
Uh-huh.
Right? That I really now conceptualize the sort of multitude that is Dax.
Right.
And so when Ben is speaking with them, it's because if you play that scene in a different context, it could be he's sort of very
condescendingly paternal.
Yeah, and it just all worked. And then to have it turn at the end and it's him that she's referring to him being kind of like having to grow up, and it's just really beautifully done, and I thought it was a great scene.
I think it's a really interesting way to sort of exemplify how relationships change. Mm-hmm. Right? You know, we it's the sci-fi version, right? So you're literally changing half of your body and personality, but as we grow up, as we change, whether it's between siblings or child parent, it becomes different. The dynamics change as you age, as you grow, as you mature. The dynamic isn't the same. And I think it's a really good way of saying, like, we are still best friends, but there's not like a young one and an old one anymore.
Mm-hmm. And
there's not one who is a higher rank than the other. Like, it's all constantly changing. And I think that's part of real life. Yeah, so I think that's really strong. I liked my best scene is Dax calling out the historical inaccuracies in the Klingon. The Klingon culture is it's all about stories. It's all about history. It's all about these things, but they're all kind of apocryphal. They're all sort of fables, not necessarily true. And that's part of Klingon culture that they're self-aware about it. They know. I mean, like when we were doing with Kang and Kern and whatever, and they were, it's going to make a good story. Because Klingon culture is a little bit like wrestling culture. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yes, and I think what it also highlights, but that's true for many cultures, religions, things, people. It's when you use those inaccuracies hypocritically, right? Like when you know that it's BS, but you use it to be high and mighty about something, that's when
when you make it drama, not comedy.
Yeah, right. It's like when I'm judging you because you don't measure up to a standard I've set that I know is bullshit. There's the explicit tag. That I know is BS. That's just willful hypocrisy, right? So that's right. What I think.
Like if I genuinely think I'm better than you because of some appropriated title, that's not even real.
Mm-hmm. Right, and or they're crucifying Dax. To be specific, they're crucifying Dax here because she's not living up to these traditions, and she's this. Listen. Normally, for a normal family, it wouldn't matter so much, but you're trying to come into a prestigious family. That's not even right. So
well, it's like I always joke like that. I had relatives on the Mayflower. Like, where do I cash that?
Right.
So I'm supposed to be rich.
There's a show on right now. I think it's called Nobody Wants This. It's about this non-Jew, this Shiksa who falls in love with. It's Kristen Bell. She falls in love with a rabbi, and it's about trying that inter-religious relationship trying to take place. And she meets his mom, and slight spoilers for this show. She meets his mom, and the mom is doing exactly this. It's the exact same beats. And Kristen Bell goes in and in a huff and finds her eating pork in the kitchen. Finds the mom eating pork, and then leverages that to make her accept her for the family, like in front of everybody. Which is where I thought this was going, but that scene gets skipped. Oh, sorry, I'm already in stem bolts.
Yeah, let's do some stem bolts.
Yeah, sorry, I don't even know. I completely lost my train of thought.
So the bumpers are for.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some stem bolts for you.
Yeah, so I missed that. I thought that scene could be leveraged to help the acceptance at the end, but to your point, it doesn't really matter. But that's sort of the problem, right? It doesn't really matter. All of the beats felt like there was no real drama in the breakup because you see it coming. There's no real drama in. It lacks a lot of drama. You know what I mean?
Fair.
But that's okay. We've had our fill of it. I said from the beginning, it's like you go in expecting a palate cleanser, exactly what you get. I thought there's a nice soupçon of comedic elements throughout. I thought there's some good heart-to-hearts, right? It was like almost Full House conversations.
Right.
Use the violins.
Yeah, totally.
No, I didn't. There wasn't a bunch of stakes, and that was great too. It ended with a wedding, which was fine. Everything felt fine, and it's funny. They've earned for me, over the now, I know we're judging them individually, but they've earned this kind of break. And I feel like they've did enough to sort of reset the emotional state of everyone. I think that there are the two scenes that would have been heavy, like the reconciliation between the two women and the reconciliation between Odo and Kira. I do think they sort of punted them.
Right.
Because for lack of time or for lack of wanting to make the episode too deep. So all in all, it just feels sort of like exactly what a palate cleanser is. Like we had some sorbet. It's not ice cream. And it's definitely, I probably would have preferred to have more steak. But, you know, I'm not mad at it. But we're definitely nowhere in the, but, and it's so cool to see now. Think about where we are now. We've got Bashir and O'Brien who are buddies now. We've got Alexander, who's just sort of like cool with being where he is. Worf, everybody is who they are now, which is cool. Final form, if you will.
Yeah.
But you know, you don't rise to the ranks, but just solid. You're in a solid B territory. So I'm going to give you an 84, 83 SSBs.
Yeah. No, I feel exactly the same way. This is it's a nice palate cleanser. I think, you know, look, we are still moving forward in the story. Like, it is a wedding. I mean, you know, Worf and Dax are now married. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I like the you know, the building work we do on Martok here by meeting his wife, but getting to understand his relationship with his wife. I think that's great.
Martok's awesome.
Martok is amazing. And you understand now, finally, why, like, I was so desperate for a Martok figure.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, he's so good.
There's no Martok figure?
No. There's no Wayun. There's no Martok.
What are we doing? What are we even doing?
It's because Playmates bailed.
I think I gotta go and watch your top 100 figures.
Yeah, right? Well, because it's got too many Voyager spoilers now.
Yeah, you're right.
You gotta make your own. So I like... You know, I think, as I said, I wish that we had given a little bit more weight to Odo Kira's conversation. And, you know, that might not be done, right? But whatever the first conversation, like, I don't necessarily need to hear their third conversation about what happened. I kind of want to hear their first one.
You know, I tried to defend it earlier, but if you're going to make such a beat about it, like we're avoiding each other, then you're making it an important conversation. You are highlighting that. And then to punt it entirely is sort of like... And to be, you know, and the creators and they have been honest, like, we wish we did that differently. You know, they were just like, the time was just going so fast. Everybody on the show also regrets not having given that a little bit more weight. So we're not alone. You know, but like you said, it's a great palate cleanser. It's not a perfect episode, but I think it achieves what you want it to achieve. We continue some world building. We plant our feet back on the station, which is great. Some funny stuff. I think there's some stuff that could have been funnier, but Star Trek struggles with that. But like Aaron Eisenberg's dance, it's the funniest thing of the whole season. Just there's no reason not to just give it everything it's worth. So gets 80 self-sealing stem bolts from me. Folks, what did you think? Leave your ratings in self-sealing stem bolts in the comments down below. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/K&M. In the world, this got a 7.3 out of 10, which gives it 108 out of 173 episodes of Deep Space Nine. Next week, we are doing the episode Resurrection. So that will be fun to talk about when we will do this next week. And we appreciate everybody watching and coming along the journey with us. I hope you enjoyed the wedding. We will see you back, next week. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike. Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/K&M.
Meanwhile, I got gussied up twice this week for Deep Space Nine.
What was the other Gussie?
Yesterday,
What was yesterday?
our 4 o'clock shoot.
What was our 4 o'clock shoot yesterday?
This. Remember, you didn't tell me you were going to do it.
Oh, I'm glad I recorded all that.
Great. All right, let's.
Wait, I got one.
Okay, great.